So, hello, good morning. I'm Karina Parriman and welcome to our In Conversation at Woolwich Art Fair. And I'm delighted to introduce our panel from the Centre for Print Research, and our artists today are part of the Artists in Residence. So I'd like you to introduce yourselves.
I'm Mike. I'm a research technician in product design for the Centre for Print Research.
I'm Chuck Elliott. I'm working as an artist in residence at the CFPR.
I'm Tracy Hill. I'm an artist in residence at CFPR and I co-lead Art Lab Contemporary Print Studios in Preston.
I'm Laura Clark and I'm a traditional printmaker, and I've been working with the artist in residence as a master printer for their editions.
And I'm Karina Parriman and I'm Director of the Centre for Print Research. So, I think we should start off with a conversation around how you came to be working with Laura at the Centre for Print Research, and how the work that you've been doing has kind of changed your practice.
Do you want me to go first? Yeah. Okay. So I initially, actually, I think I contacted you in the first instance because I was trying to find a way of working with conductive materials. And I thought, well, if anybody has done that before, it's possibly you. So I contacted you, and you had the amazing Nazmul and his team working with graphene. So we started a conversation. I then applied for the residency, and we were able to kind of expand that into a much bigger kind of project and conversation. And then I got to work with Laura and all the amazing team there. And yeah, it's changed my practice completely, actually, the last 2 years. It has shifted it immensely.
So just tell us a little bit about your background.
So I'm a visual artist, printmaker. I also work with drawing and installation. So I've always been interested in kind of that crossover between technology and traditional methods of mark making. So whether that's drawing or printmaking. And kind of the gap where those two kind of fields overlap is where I'm really interested in trying to create work. So yeah, always pushing the idea of what print can be, the possibilities of traditional mark making, and how we can change people's understanding of their possibilities as well.
So why did you apply to come to the CFPR?
Because I think you have got this really unique unit where you've got so many different disciplines also very close together. You know, they're all really aligned, and there's no barriers to moving freely between them. And I think that's quite unusual now. Lots of places have lost a lot of their facilities. And I think your approach is very similar to my approach in that we're constantly trying to shift those perceptions and to extend the possibilities of what that idea about printmaking can be. So for me, I needed to have the confidence that people understood what I was trying to do, and I think your team do understand that, because that's kind of the parameters that they're trying to kind of work within as well. So it was always going to be an easy conversation, I think.
And that conversation with Laura as well. So in terms of that collaboration between Laura and yourself, because that studio environment is crucial in order to be able to make a successful print. Yeah,
it's massively important. The conversation, the listening, the observing on both sides.
Yeah, definitely.
And that exchange that happens is like the most important part of that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, I'm really rooted in traditional printmaking, and I think what excites me is all these new ideas that come in, and the problem solving that happens from those conversations, because there's always a way that we can make something work. We just have to figure out what that way is. And I think as your idea evolved, because you started off sort of wanting to do laser cuts, and then the imagery changed, so then we had to change the way that we actually made the prints. And so the idea completely evolved, and we just followed that journey and problem solved all the way through till we came up with something that was really beautiful and did, you know, the technological side justice and the aesthetics justice. And it really was a collaboration in that sense, in that you have this incredible idea, and then the technical side from my side of it, just, you know, making this incredible thing is it was just a really, really enjoyable experience.
It's getting that balance, isn't it, between the technological and the aesthetic as well, so that the the process and the technique doesn't get in the way of the idea and what is a beautiful print.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And Chuck, tell us about your practice.
So I graduated in '92 from a college that I chose to go to because they had a Quantel paint box, which is a digital paint system, having used traditional media up until that point. And I thought the idea that you could use computer tools to make imagery and therefore print was pretty exciting. And I've been doing that ever since, so kind of 30 years, I suppose. Having run a number of studios in Soho and stuff and just made images for all comers, I kind of switched over to fine art in about 2005 and started making work for the British Gallery system or scene.
And how did you come to the centre?
So I came to Centre, I don't know when I first bumped into Centre. I think a few of my friends like Connor Wilson probably introduced me a long time ago.
Yeah.
And obviously you guys have got tremendous knowledge and deep resources in the digital area and traditional area. And that hybridity between the digital and the traditional is where I've always been interested anyway. Ultimately the digital has to be manifested into the real world.
Yeah.
So in my mind it's about real world going to the digital and then coming back out. So it's been an incredible opportunity to indulge in some much more. I suppose when you're working as a studio artist in the kind of smaller world that I live in, you don't really have access to that kind of panoply of equipment that the CFPR has as an available kind of toolbox. So it allows you to expand your ideas into areas. So as you know, I've been printing in a kind of 3D system, very much with the help of Mike and Sunny. And then turning those objects into glass objects, which is not something that I could have ever done outside of the CFPR.
And I want to pick up on that because I think because your work is very colourful, and the prints have this amazing translucency and gloss and saturation. So that transition from a flat print into something which is glass and has an incredible materiality there. I wonder if you could talk about that collaboration that you've been having with Angela.
Yeah. So all of the work I make, not quite all, most of the work I make is drawn in 3 dimensions. So I see them as kind of sculptural objects being flattened into prints. And no one really sees that except me, but I'm basically sculpting objects on a system, looking for views, effectively imaging the views or photographing the views and then putting them out as these short edition colourful prints, which are all about, most of them are all about glass and light. So the idea that you could actually make a glass object from a 3D drawing is not brand new, but it's quite new.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, so Angela, Dr. Angela Thwaites, who's a real expert practitioner in glass making on the British scene, I think, the opportunity to work with her, which I'm going to do again in a couple of weeks' time down in her studio. So you see, that's a beautiful outcome from the whole process. As I'm now visiting her studio in London, that's a really lovely synaptic connection that I wouldn't have made otherwise. No. And we may well work on other projects going forward.
Great. And you also made photopolymer plates with Laura as well.
So obviously I couldn't just do one thing.
You couldn't just do one thing.
That would
but
be
you
ridiculous,
went into monochrome, right? But it's that whole transition in relation to that.
So
again, back to the digital and analog.
They have gold as well.
They have gold.
So that part of the idea, I suppose I spent the first significant amount of time, 6, 8, 10 weeks, becoming very confused about what would be the best thing to do. Because it seemed like a time-limited opportunity. So if I'm in my own studio, I'm kind of making a succession of works with a suggestion that they'll all happen in due course. But once you're confronted with the enormous sweet shop that is the CFPR, you do have to choose whether you're going to have the sherbet dib dab or the whatever else.
So just asking about the kind of the photopolymer, the intaglio approach of how you created these images.
Yeah,
so kind of go through the steps.
So you made these amazing sort of almost like ink drawings,
right,
didn't you?
I spent a whole day making ink drawings, which was rather lovely. You mentioned at the end of the day that I'd spent the whole day scraping ink across the glass plate, which I did. And it was a very nice day. And then I photographed those and I mapped them onto a 3D model on my system in my studio, which effectively means that the calligraphy marks are then mapped into a 3D way, and basically I've added some kind of perspective and sculptural components to them, and then they've been put back out by Laura. And then obviously what I like about this, it's quite meta, is the original inking becomes the plate, and then the new inking is inked onto the plate, and that's then obviously pressed onto the paper. So you have a kind of digital ink. So it's kind of, I like the idea of talking about what the digital adds to the ink and what the ink then adds back to the digital.
So you can say...
I mean, there's a few different ways. When I saw your sort of inky lovely drawings. There was a few different ways that we could have output that, and they do look a bit like monoprints, and they could have been monoprints. And I think what's interesting is that you took them back into the digital, and then it's like, okay, how do we get them out the digital into traditional print?
That's right.
And find a method that works really well. So we use photopolymer for that, but then you wanted plate tone, but you wanted plate tone in a very specific way. So then the plate tone was actually digital.
That is fake plate tone,
It's
yes.
fake plate tone, it's
Yeah.
digital plate tone on a chine-collé. And then we've got screen printed size for the gold leaf.
Yeah.
So there's so many more elements to it than
It's
you know,
complex.
a straight digital print.
Yeah.
It's got all this, you know, extra stuff that people wouldn't necessarily know if
That's
they
how
saw
artworks are,
it.
isn't it? So I was thinking about that because you said that about a week ago, and I thought, because you were like, no one will know about any of this, and you don't, but subconsciously you do. When you stand in front of a piece of work, although you don't quite know how it's been put together, you do kind of, it has a sort of, it projects something subliminally, I think, ultimately.
I mean, it's so
And I think you can kind
handmade.
of see
isn't
that
it?
it's super handmade,
Yeah.
but also super digital.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how many people would really understand that it was super digital, and I really like that about
They
that
wouldn't.
work.
Because
they
the
kind
amount of
wouldn't.
layers that we had just for the plate tone, like
the
you had
digital's
about
quite hidden.
30 layers or something,
Yeah, yeah,
just for a tiny little bit of grey.
yeah.
And yeah, it's super digital,
It is
but you
super
would
digital.
never
You wouldn't
know.
So it's an interesting print.
Yeah, and it's the same with yours really, in terms of you've got that graphene layer which is hidden by this amazing thick black
Yeah.
wavelengths of.
So I always wanted it. I mean, there were certain things that I knew I wanted to achieve while I did my residency. So it is very tempting to spend the entire time thinking about making a huge body of work, but I did come with a very specific objective, and I knew that I needed to pay attention to kind of the technicalities of working with the graphene and the electronics. But yes, so that hidden layer of graphene, although I wanted it to be kind of that magical, how are you connecting with the idea of touching something, or maybe not even touching it and acting as a proximity sensor to trigger a sound. Actually, the graphene layer became incredibly important, that it was visible because I wanted it to be a statement in its own right. So that became increasingly important. So the choice of paper became an issue, and that conversation between materials was as important actually as the image that sits on the surface.
And this beautiful pattern as well. You can kind of see through the back of the black layer, and then along the edges as well, which I think is
So
quite
that layer is hand drawn. So I had the graphene ink itself scanned so that you could see the physical structure of it, and then I hand drew that structure. So I wanted it to be a representation of itself in a very visual way.
Yeah, fantastic.
And yeah, that had a knock-on effect of all the materials that we used from then on. We had to change
Change
paper, change ink. Even with the graphene, you know, we printed double layer and sort of built it up that way. So then that kind of changed the aesthetics again. And yeah, there's so much to it. In making one little change, it just has this knock-on effect.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So Tracy and Chuck are two of 12 artists as part of this Artists in Residence, and so what the next question was, how do you curate a show for Woolwich that brings all these people together? And so we came up with the idea of a cabinet of curiosities where people can engage, it's as an installation, and to be able to showcase people's work, to be able to encourage people to come up and touch the work, to really get close, but also to feel curious, as the cabinet, we hope, kind of enables people to do. So Mike, you are instrumental in the construction of this cabinet. So I wonder if you could talk about how you or how we came about creating this amazing construction and installation.
Yeah. So you had an idea
I mean, on a cabinet.
good number of months ago to have a cabinet of curiosities. I was like, oh, I have no idea what that is, but
We'll come
happy
up with
to get
something.
involved. Yeah, like missing a bit of woodwork in my life. So we sort of had a few discussions about what it might be. A bit of work on a design, then like decided, nah, I don't like that, I'll start again. So we had a few U-turns and came up with an idea to make a reconfigurable cabinet so that even beyond Woolwich, we could then have it reconfigurable to different spaces, so you can either we or a curator of a gallery or a group of children could arrange this cabinet in a different way based on what they want to say with it. And that as well enables us to expand it in the future should we want to show more artworks or different artworks.
So it can be deconstructed just with an Allen key, which I think is a brilliant idea. And as you say, it can be it's like a transformer.
Yeah.
I think, so what we hope in the future is to be able to take it to all sorts of different places. It's an installation that doesn't need walls, and so it can be a standalone in foyers, in schools, in libraries, and museums. So, and I really hope that we will have more conversations, more exhibitions, and more encounters. So the last I'd like to ask is, what have you enjoyed Woolwich, and what have you been your thoughts about the event so far?
I think Woolwich is obviously a fantastic print show. I've been coming for a few years, and I think it's one of the best shows in London in any given year, really. It's certainly one you want to see. There's some really lovely work here, and I think the combination of the open selection and the gallery half and half, which is really unusual. I think normally it's all galleries or all open selection, right? So that combination makes it into quite a different thing. The open selection, I think, is a little bit less commercial than what some of the galleries are going to bring, which gives it an extra edge, which is really nice to see. It's a special show, and it's a real treat to be here.
Real treat.
Yeah.
Tracy?
No, I would agree, actually. I think when you first come, I think just the sheer scale of having so much print under one roof, the diversity, it's really, really visible immediately. It hits you, the diversity and the potential of print, which is great. But that mix between the galleries and the open the curated hang is brilliant, because everybody's on a level.
Yes.
And as an artist, it helps you to get an idea about where you sit within that, which you don't often see that.
Yeah.
And again, in a very visual way. And the energy here on the opening night was amazing. It was such a celebration. It was lovely.
Yeah.
It's a really nice thing to be part of.
So I think, thank you very much for coming and for your thoughts and conversations, and really just to thank Jack and Lizzie as well for inviting us here, and we really hope to be coming back again next year. So thank you very much.